until 10:45. Have you ever noticed that students anymore can't do analog, just digital clocks? Is it just my grandchildren and myself? Yeah. So, and you get to be my age. And so you do these like Medicare checks, and I had to draw on a clock yesterday what exactly kind of interesting what 10:45 looked like. But I had to think about it for a little bit, like with the short, but anyway, I was like, oh, wow, that's kind of hard. So welcome to, of course, the December in-person academic affairs meeting, and we will begin with roll call
Regent Johnston,
here.
Regent Mendoza,
Present.
Regent Ama is not here. Jen Bonzraki,
Present.
Jesse Mendez.
Here.
Crystal Peterba,
Here.
and Sam Christie Dangermond.
Here.
And that concludes roll.
Thank you.
Make a point of order.
Yes.
Chair Benson is also a member of this committee. And we haven't been listing him. I'm not quite sure how that slipped through, so if you would, Madeline, please add his name for the role and maybe call his name again so it'll reflect that he's not present.
Thank you, Vice President Von Hollen. And due to the fact then that we realized that Chair Benson is an official member of the committee, and the reason we did that was just, well, in case somebody else couldn't be there, but knowing that today we don't have a quorum as there's just two of us, even though in the past we thought we had a quorum. It really doesn't affect anything, except we won't be voting. We'll just say, are there any objections when we talk about moving the things forward? So like when we talk about the system-wide transfer courses, we will, if there's no objections, we will just recommend that those move forward to the full board, if that works with everybody. So sorry about that. We didn't realize that was the case. So we appreciate that. One of the things that I've been missing doing, and I apologize, is introductions. And so I know that we're late in the semester, but are there any introductions that anybody would like to make of people that are here that are not typically here? No? Okay. Well, then we will move on to approval of the minutes. And again, if there are no objections to the minutes, we would assume that those are approved. No consent items, and then of course on the discussion agenda items, Dr. Bonzraki, would you like to take that?
Absolutely. Good morning, Regents. It's my pleasure to bring forward 5 new courses for your review and consideration for inclusion in system-wide transfer. The associated issue paper for this is on page 6 of your BASC packet. So just as a friendly reminder, the Kansas Core Outcomes Conference Group met October 10th, and we had over 500 faculty members who were involved in that work. TAC has reviewed the reports from the KCOG conference, and they recommend that these 5 newly developed courses be recognized by the Kansas Board of Regents system for transfer. These courses are Ceramics 1, Data Structures, World Literature, and Oral Skills 1 and 2. KBOR staff also recommend approval of these 5 new courses, and they would be effective summer of 2026. If approved, the number of courses in our system-wide transfer would increase from 126 to 131. I'm happy to stand for any questions.
Do we have any questions surrounding those courses, of course, being recommended for statewide transfer? If none, and there are no objections, then we will recommend that the approval of those new system-wide transfer courses be moved to, of course, the agenda today.
Thank you so much. Next, I bring forward a request to remove one course, Math 0990 Intermediate Algebra, from the system-wide transfer course list. So I'll provide a little context on why this is needed because we've not removed a course from system-wide transfer before. But as the board is aware, policy was updated in May 2023 on gateway course placement and developmental education. And that policy specifies that course content from intermediate algebra is not college level and may not be applied towards degrees effective in beginning fall of 2026. With this context in mind, the mathematics discipline group met as part of the KCOG conference in October, and TAC reviewed the course report from this disciplinary group and recommends support for removal of intermediate algebra from system-wide transfer. KBOR staff also supports this recommendation, and it would be effective summer 2026. If approved and based on the 5 courses we just approved, removing this course would bring our total number of courses in system-wide transfer to 1/3. Happy to stand for any questions on this as well.
Thank you for that information. I think it's important. Do we have any questions or discussion surrounding the removal of intermediate algebra from the transfer articulation agreement?
No.
None? All right, this is gonna be a fast meeting, so far so good. All right. Then, if there are no objections, then we would also recommend for the full group discussion of the things after that. So next up, other matters. Provost Mendez, if you would like to address the program review follow-up.
Thank you, Regent Johnson, Regent Mendoza. Today's update outlines how Kansas State University is approaching the academic program review within the broader framework of institutional effectiveness. This work reflects several years of continuous improvement and is guided by our responsibility to ensure academic quality, fiscal sustainability, and student success. The intent of this presentation is to show how program review, administrative efficiency, and strategic investment are being integrated in a coherent institutional-wide. Continue on as far as we do have slides, so
Okay.
we're waiting on, so
There we go.
second slide, please. K-State has been working deliberately on administrative efficiencies throughout ongoing review and improvement. A task force was convened in 2019 and 2020 focused on academic innovation with a recommendation implemented during the 2023-2024 academic year. A key outcome was the realignment of the global campus functions into the provost office and related student success units, strengthening institutional-wide academic support and innovation. Critically, the timing of our revised annual program review and revitalization process coincides with KBOR's revised program review and K-State's own budgetary remodeling process that's going to be announced in a couple of weeks. Together, these aligned efforts create clear mechanisms for program revitalization investments and, where appropriate, restructuring opportunities. This alignment allows the university to evaluate academic programs, enrollment demand, and resource sustainability in a coordinated and intentional way rather through disconnected processes.
Next slide, please.
So historically, every department has had their own degree programs, leadership team, and staff. One of the current processes we're going through right now is looking at all of our departments and critically analyzing whether the instructional efficiency is there through various metrics, including but not limited to faculty FTEs. If the program does not meet this minimum threshold, there's consideration for possible restructuring emerging. Currently at K-State, we have 18 departments with 10 faculty, tenure track faculty or fewer. We have 21 departments with between the faculty population of 11 to 15 tenured faculty overall. So these are small programs. So a total of like 39 programs are kind of rather small overall. In this process, we'll go through, that's just the number of tenure faculty members is just, it's imperfect measure. There's nuance there. And so I'm not saying that we're gonna merge all 39 of these departments. If we did, it would be over $5 million of administrative savings. I don't think we're gonna go that deep into it. There's nuance. We have a couple of different programs that need to be in their current status. We have the Cecilia School of Leadership that's rather nuanced and is highly specialized. So there's just overall just taking a review overall, looking at the nuance. And we'll be undertaking that process in the next month or so, going through shared governance at K-State as well. Next slide, please. A previous historic case that we've gone through before my time at K-State is we've reorganized the College of Human and Health Sciences. Previously, this college was organized across several different departments: applied human sciences, fashion studies, food nutrition, dietetics, and health, hospitality management, and others. Under Dean Binke's leadership, they reorganized in a couple of different schools, about 4 different schools. The School of Human Sciences, the School of Health Sciences, and this School of Consumer Sciences, actually 3 schools. So this has actually reduced the amount of administrative costs overall, saving about $400,000 in this process. It's also allowed the different departments and the different programs within these now schools to work more efficiently and more seamlessly together overall. So in summary, our administrative efficiency process, we're going through a budgetary remodeling process
Next slide, please.
in which we will we'll identify areas of efficiency by reviewing current department and units data and trends with the lens of through the lens of the next gen strategic plan at K-State. We'll continue to work through and identify areas of efficiency and areas of investment. As mentioned before, working through shared governance is really important at K-State, so looking forward to engaging faculty senate throughout this entire process. And also, once again, context matters. There's nuance, and there's not gonna be a one-size-fits-all approach. So with that, I'll pass the baton to my colleague, Dr. Moore Schroeder.
Good morning. So I'm gonna focus on our graduate program side of things. And so when looking at our graduate programs, we've actually taken a deep dive into our graduate programs through our annual program review process, student learning outcomes process, and then also in the context of what's going on at the federal level, looking closely at our graduate program, the impacts that certain things have been having and how we can continue to grow and improve in our graduate student program area. So at K-State, we have 120 total master and doctoral degree programs. This does not include our professional programs. Of the 120 doctoral and master's degrees, we have 19 master's degrees that have an average of 12 or less enrolled. And then we have 1 doctoral program that has an average of 7 or less enrolled. And that's based on the data that we're provided for our cable review this past year. And looking at the current data that we have right now for this year, our snapshot data, there hasn't been that much change in those 20 different low enrolled programs. But enrollment in a program is just one indicator. So we also cross-reference, okay, with the enrollment, what about the completion thresholds? Next slide, please. Sorry. I changed it on mine and that doesn't change it on yours. And so we actually can narrow down. We have 5 master's degrees that have low enrollment and low completion rates according to the standards that we have at K-State and then the standards that we have at KBOR as well. And they are spread across our College of Health and Human Sciences, College of Agriculture, College of Arts and Sciences. These 5 programs, as Jesse said earlier, are actually all part of our budget remodel process and are encompassed in our overall approach to relooking at some of our structure. And we believe that these will be addressed as we move forward with our budget remodel process. And we will continue to monitor them closely and work with the graduate school as well for additional opportunities for these different programs. Next slide, please. Overall, we've done a lot in terms of thinking about graduate enrollment and our footprint on graduate enrollment. Over the past 2 years, we have built out a program-specific graduate student recruitment team that has been completed with a lead graduate student recruitment director this past fall this past summer that was named. One of the other things that we've done is we've really scaled our digital advertising and social media outreach. We have a new director of communications and marketing that arrived at K-State about a year ago, who did an overall analysis about our enrollment marketing and our overall brand and how we're doing our campaigns, and saw a lot of opportunity there. And so we've been really able to do a lot more with digital advertising and social media outreach. This slide just presents on the right side, I guess you probably can't see it very well, sorry. Just talks about our extreme growth we've had, especially this fall. We are close to hitting the 10,000 mark on followers. And then this particular view shows that our reach is 97% for non-followers, which means that it's not our traditional audiences. We are reaching outside of our traditional audiences with our marketing campaigns. And we're looking forward to diving deeper into how those yield into new learners. Additionally, we've launched targeted graduate recruitment events and webinars for several of our high caliber programs, and then also have launched recruitment events and webinars for our programs who have a lower enrollment than we'd like to see. We've also implemented search optimization and disciplines-based name exchanges. We also created a Cross the Finish Line scholarship program that we're using our Next Gen 1K State funds that helps to assist graduate students with degree completion. And we are in our second semester of that program. And then finally, we are finishing our university-wide compensation study that includes graduate teaching assistants, graduate research assistants, and graduate assistant pay overall. We understand and know that we have gaps in our pay for our graduate students. And we are committed to rectifying that. And part of the budget remodel process will lay out a plan, a stair-step plan for addressing our graduate assistant pay over the next 2 to 3 years. And finally, next slide, please. So just encompassing what we just talked about, and also talking about the efficiencies. Again, we are going through a pretty comprehensive budget remodel process, especially for reviewing efficiencies and investments. That will be announced in the early spring. Again, we're doing a case-by-case basis. One size does not fit all. We are using our shared governance processes to have these conversations, especially as we look at merging or closing programs, departments, et cetera. We do continue to make funds available to departments and units to go through program revitalization. We have anywhere from $300,000 to $700,000 set aside each year to reinvest in programs that might need some revitalization or restructuring. And then finally, we have established a work group that with a consultant that is working on our policies for competency-based education. We believe that this is an area of growth, especially in the graduate program area for K-State. And so we are working closely with them, and we will have some new ideas, new policies that we will be able to take to K-Board for potential approval late May for competency-based education programs. And we welcome any questions at this time.
Thank you. Do we have any questions? For my part, I would just like to say thank you for all the work on this through shared governance, and the fact that we really do appreciate and think it's important to look at those efficiencies and synergies and see how, like you said, with your budget restructure. And I completely agree that it has to be more than one metric. You know, that's the reason, hopefully, that there is, you know, some give and take within the program review process. But I too know that there's no way we're going to be able to have something that absolutely covers all the programs. I always thought it would be helpful if there was a way to put programs on a shelf, you know, and so when they're not working because maybe at that time, you know, where we're at in our economy or in our workforce, we're not really needing that. But you hate to get rid of a program and then when it is needed, you're not flexible enough to be able to say, you know what, we can do that. And so I think sometimes if we look at efficiencies and mergers, it's a way to keep a program that then, hopefully anyway, we have the flexibility later to say, you know what, if I can make some adjustments to that and pull that back off, it makes me a little more nimble in terms of workforce and things like that. So I appreciate all the work that you've done on that. And I'd also like to say, I did not know that. I love the Cross the Line scholarship thing for people trying to complete their masters, because especially those folks that a lot of times life's already happened and they're trying to get there, and you know, just a few extra dollars to get over some of those hurdles can be very, very beneficial. So I hope that it'll be interesting to see how well that works. I'd be interested in seeing, you know, those people that attained that or that were given that scholarship if they completed, because I think that's really important. I don't have any questions other than I just appreciate all the work that's done on this. And I know it's a heavy lift for everybody when we ask you to bring that stuff to us. So appreciate that. All right, if anybody else. Okay. Next then is the private post-secondary report.
All right, well, thank you, and good morning. I just want to provide a little bit of an overview of private and out-of-state post-secondary and what we do in our unit, as items related to the board's regulatory role do not often come to the board. So just want to provide a reminder, and somebody's calling me, sorry. Through my team. I thought I had that muted, sorry. So again, just providing a little bit of an overview of the board's regulatory authority. The board, in addition to governing the community or the state universities and coordinating the community and technical colleges, the board also has regulatory authority over private and out-of-state institutions operating in Kansas. In 1999, Senate Bill 345 transferred this regulatory authority from KSD over to the board office. And in 2004, the Kansas Private and Out-of-State Post-Secondary Educational Institution Act was enacted, and we still operate under this act today. This act authorizes the board to regulate most private institutions that are physically located in Kansas, but it also applies to out-of-state institutions that are offering online programs to Kansans who remain in Kansas while they're taking that coursework. I do want to clarify that there are some private institutions that are located in Kansas that are exempt from the act. That those are the independent institutions, so like Baker University, Ottawa University, and those other institutions that have a long-standing history in Kansas. They are specifically listed as exempt in the act. The act also exempts institutions that participate in SARA, the State Authorization Reciprocity Agreement. So there are some out-of-state institutions that are exempt from the approval requirements as well. If it's determined that an institution needs to seek approval in Kansas, the institution submits an initial application to the board office for review, and they pay a fee. The application includes institutional information such as ownership and financial statements, admission documentation such as enrollment agreement and catalogs, recruiting and marketing materials, program coursework, and faculty qualification. Staff reviews the submitted documentation to ensure that it meets the minimum requirements established by statutes and regulation and education and industry standards. Once an application is approved and the institution receives approval, they must submit an annual renewal application to document continued compliance with the minimum requirements. Next slide. This slide provides the number of approved institutions over the last 5 years. And as you can see, there was a big drop from 2022 to 2023, but this decrease was primarily due to a modification in the physical presence definition, and an addition of an exemption for review courses, which resulted in several institutions no longer needing to seek renewal. And so that number fell off a little bit. But for fiscal year 23 into 24, we stayed pretty steady with the 116 approved institutions during fiscal year 24. And since July 1st of 24, we've approved 5 new institutions, and we currently have 5 other institutions that are in the initial application process. Of the 116 that were active in fiscal year 2024, 80 were in-state institutions offering face-to-face or some form of hybrid programs, and 36 were out-of-state offering online only. The approved institutions offer a wide variety of programs ranging from certificate level to doctorate level, and their content areas are just as varied. The institutions are approved to offer everything from CDL training to healthcare programs, business education programs, welding to osteopathic medicine programs. In fiscal year 24, there were a total of 1,785 approved programs. But as you can see from the slide, they are mostly in the certificate and diploma level. Student enrollments have continued to stay steady over fiscal year 24, with 23,377 Kansas students enrolled in these approved programs. 74% of these students report as female, and 58% are in the age range of 20 to 35 years old. And then looking at award or enrollments, this chart, you can see the breakout. This is for all levels, degree and non-degree, but you can see a majority, 64% of the enrollments are at in health professions and related programs, and this is mostly CNA and CMA programs, and this has been consistent across the years that those have been of the higher enrollments. And looking at awards completed, so at the completions, students earned 12,308 awards during fiscal year 24. And as the previous slide indicated that the institutions offer programs at certificate on to doctorate level, it's important to note that 95% of fiscal year 24 students award completions were at the certificate and diploma level. And so while they're offering programs at all levels, most Kansans are enrolling in and completing programs at the certificate and diploma level. And given that the most awards are at the certificate level, this slide provides a breakout of programs within that. It's really hard to read, I'm sorry. But most of the completions are in health-related professions, which again is mostly the CNA and CMAs. The personal and culinary services is the next category, which includes the cosmetology, barbering, and nail technology programs. So the board regulates the cosmetology and barbering schools that are Title IV. If they have eligible for Title IV funding, they have to be approved by our office. The third one that we are seeing an increase in is the transportation and materials moving. This is the entry-level driving training and CDL training programs. We're seeing an increase due to the change in the federal level that's requiring training before those individuals can take their CDL exam. So I mentioned earlier that we have some new institutions coming in. Most of those are CDL training schools. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? Any comments? Thank you. It was a good report. It's interesting to see the number and and actually the students, the Kansas students that choose private institutions. Thank you for the report. Appreciate it. All right, next we have Director Christy Dangermont.
Thank
Yes.
you, Regent Johnston. I'm going to give you guys the QA report, the Qualified Admissions Report. State statute requires the board to report on the number and percentage of students admitted to the state universities who did not meet the minimum requirements. So students who are admitted by exception. This is a standard report we do every year. And since statute requires we provide this report to the legislature, we share it with BASC before we send it over, just for informational purposes. It starts on page 11 of the agenda. And since most of the report focuses on the number of students admitted by exception, I think it's important to share with BASC that state statute and regulations and KBOR policy all require that students admitted by exception adopt an individual plan for student success. For policy, state universities shall work with each student admitted by exception to develop such a plan in writing with their advisor. The plan must address the student's academic coursework. It must be adopted prior to their initial enrollment at the university. And it must be reviewed once each semester minimum during that first year of the student's enrollment. So these are students who may struggle academically, but there are resources in place for these students. So the minimum requirements for the state universities for resident and non-resident freshmen under the age of 21 are listed on pages 12 and 13. The majority of freshman applicants have graduated from accredited high schools. So for those students, they have to either earn a 21 composite on the ACT or meet a minimum cumulative high school GPA. For Emporia State, Fort Hays State, Pittsburgh State, and Wichita State, that GPA is a 2.25. For K-State, it's a 3.25. KU's requirements are slightly different. They require a 21 on the ACT and a minimum high school cumulative GPA of a 2.0, or as a standalone measure, a 3.25 minimum high school GPA. Those are changing. The board approved some changes to KU's and K-State's admissions requirements recently, but those are going through the regulatory process and they won't be in effect for a few more years. So for now, those are the requirements. And then for freshman applicants 21 and older, they have to graduate from high school. And for non-residents, it must be accredited or earn a high school equivalency with the prescribed minimums. So again, if students don't meet these requirements, they can be admitted as an exception. And state statute and regulations limit the number of resident freshmen who can be admitted by exception to 10% of the university's total freshmen admitted, both resident and non-residents. Table 1 is on page 12 of the agenda. That illustrates the number of a resident freshman admitted by exception. So no university exceeded the limit on the number of students admitted by exception in that category. You can see the range is from 0.1% to about 3.8% for institutions, and so they were well below the 10% maximum. Table 2 is on page 13 of the agenda, and it illustrates the number of non-resident freshmen admitted by exception. Regulations limit the number of non-resident freshmen who can be admitted by exception to 10% of the total number of non-resident freshmen admitted, or 50 students, whichever is greater. So again, no university exceeded the limit on that number of students admitted by exception. And you can see the percentages there ranged from 0.2% to 9.1%. The next category is resident and non-transfer applicants, and they have to have 24 or more hours of transferable coursework to be admitted as transfer students. They're required to have at least a 2.0 GPA on transferable coursework for admission to all of the state universities except for KU. KU, that's a 2.5 GPA on transferable coursework. Table 3 shows the number of transfer students admitted by exception. Statute and regulations limit the number of transfer students admitted by exception to 10% of the university's total number admits for each of those categories, resident and non-resident separately. No institution exceeded the limit in either category, with the highest percentage of either category being 8.9%. So finally, we have a little additional information for you that that we're not required to provide to the legislature. We provide it to BASC for informational purposes, and that is the number of students denied admission. Table 4 shows the number of freshman applicant denials. Table 5 shows the number of transfer applicant denials. And something kind of interesting, the number of resident freshmen admitted by exception overall was 655. Compare that to the number who were denied admission at 829. They're pretty close. Further, the number of resident transfer applicants admitted by exception was 134, which is only slightly less than the number of resident transfer applicants who were denied admission. That was 158. So given the low percentages of students denied admission, we don't think those numbers show that access for Kansas applicants is a big issue. And then just a reminder, residents can only be denied if they do not meet the minimum requirements. Freshman applicants who are denied can attend a community college, and as soon as they earn the 24 or more hours, there they can apply for admission as a transfer student. So to conclude, staff will send tables 1 through 3 to the legislature in January, and that meets the reporting requirements set by statute. So I'm happy to answer any questions if you guys have any.
Thank you. That report. Any questions?
Yes, I hate to admit, I can't find the pages you're referencing.
Oh, I'm sorry. On pages 11, the report should start on page 11 of the agenda.
But it's under that.
Yeah. That agenda.
So it's gonna be one something.
Do we not have printed
It's okay, we
agendas?
just have the page.
Okay.
It's not in the board.
It's in that basket.
It's in the document right there.
Oh, and that,
Sorry, I thought you guys had agendas for
okay.
the back meeting. Pardon me. Thank you.
It's on that thing. Read on my phone now. No. I've seen it.
Okay. Sorry, I just was trying to find what you were.
I'm the same way. I'll let you
I
take.
just want to review it here. I don't
Yeah.
have any questions. It's fine.
I did have just one quick question. You may have met, so the high schools that are non-accredited, so their students have to have a GED? Or how does that work?
It depends, and I think it depends on if they're resident. It's a Kansas high
Kansas.
school or not. I think they're okay. They look at the GPA. They may have to rely on the ACT as well. I just can't remember
I was
because the
just curious, like,
regulations are
so,
kind
but they still look at the GPA even though it's a non-accredited?
I
high
believe
school?
so.
Seems like we see more and more of those non-accredited high schools around where I'm at. But I just was curious. I didn't know exactly how that worked. If they were non-accredited, to actually have the credential, they'd have to get a GED.
I don't think so. I think they would they may require an ACT for those. The out-of-state high schools have to be accredited, for admission in most cases. Or they can be
Out-of-state.
admitted by exception.
Or the exception. Okay. Interesting. Yeah, thank you. Any other comments or questions? Concerning the report? Thank you. That was a good report. Interesting materials. And it looks like we're very open and accessible. So good news. And hopefully the legislature will look at that. It's good news. So next, the academic affairs update. VP Monholland.
Yes, and I've combined 2 updates into one presentation, so another evidence of efficiency here.
There you go.
First, I'll give you a quick update on the reduced credit bachelor's degrees work group. I presented an update to SCOCO earlier this morning and essentially given you fast the same update. The work group met via Teams on December 8th. It was, I thought, a good conversation. We covered a lot of ground. Before the meeting, I shared a document with the work group members that I entitled Draft Policy Framework for Reduced Credit Bachelor's Degrees. The intent was to try to move the work forward by seeking to identify some elements of a policy framework. Not necessarily have the whole policy completed, but try to find those elements, those aspects on which there were agreements. The two-year sector pushed back a bit on this approach, saying that they felt it was a bit premature. I responded that I felt that we were doing what the board had directed us to do, and that was to start putting together a policy and report back to the board for its consideration. There are issues, obviously, that are going to be some disagreement around on these kinds of degrees. Perhaps one of the most obvious involves transfer. One of the policy framework statements I included in the document was, quote, "To the greatest extent feasible, reduced credit bachelor degrees must respect existing transfer pathways." That was an attempt to acknowledge that it would be difficult for a four-year university to accept 60 credits and then require 45 upper division credits as part of the major requirements. It was pointed out that some credits from the community colleges may transfer already as upper division, but I don't think those were sufficient to lower that number. So there needs to be some further conversation. Community colleges would like to see 60 credits, at least 60 credits transfer, much like they do with a traditional baccalaureate degree. The two-year sector also brought up the point, what they would like to see is preserving the value of the traditional bachelor's degree by removing the word bachelor's or baccalaureate from this title, pardon me, and ask that the board approve institutions to offer 90 credit hour credentials rather than a reduced credit bachelor's degree. So this would not be a bachelor's degree in name, as I understood the argument, but rather a credential somewhere between an associate degree and a bachelor's degree. They suggested workforce specialists or undergraduate specialists or perhaps some other title to distinguish it from their traditional baccalaureate degrees. There seemed to be some, I think, a fairly broad interest in requiring reduced credit bachelor degrees to have a clear connection to workforce needs in the state. So that, I think might be one of the policy planks framework as we move forward. There was also a discussion around having a limited pilot program to gauge interest among students and employers, excuse me. There was a range of perspectives on that topic. But I kind of took the conversation by the end, at least in my mind, that this could be one possible approach. We'd still need to develop a policy framework for how that would work, but it could begin to move the process forward. I shared that we're working with the Docking Institute at Fort Hays State University to conduct a statewide survey of businesses in Kansas to try to get a sense of their support or their understanding of reduced credit bachelor's degrees. I thought SCOCO's, our conversation this morning in COCO was very productive and very helpful. We'll take a look at the transcript and try to glean some of those ideas and as we move forward. Now, the second update is to finish this out. As you I think are aware that I'm retiring on January 30th, and Dr. Jennifer Bonds-Racky will assume my duties as Vice President for Academic Affairs. She and I have been conferring on this work for the last couple of weeks, ever since the announcement was made, and actually we've done this prior to that. So Jen is very familiar with what we're trying to do here. We'll sit down and try to, as I said, look at some of the ideas that came out of SCOCO's discussion earlier today, with the intent to have another work group meeting early in January, my apologies, and one then late in January, just before my departure. So I'm happy to take any questions if there are any.
Thank you, Vice President Mulholland first, and, we'll get to see you again in January, but
Yes.
we greatly appreciate, your dedication to all things improving academics here in the state and the work that you've done. And it really is invaluable work. And so I greatly
you.
appreciate it on a personal basis. I've really appreciated getting to work with you. So,
Thank you. That's
so
very
thank
kind.
you. Thank you so much. Do you have questions or on, when we talk about the reduced credit hour, again, thank you to the work group. That obviously there's going to be a lot of impact when we talk about that. And it's very new as we look at it nationally in terms of, what it can do and the opportunities that it will provide, but also at the same time making sure that we do have some guardrails in terms of, there's lots of concerns about the fact that, are you looking at a 120-hour degree and trying to say, well, that's not valuable. I don't need that fourth year. And so there's just a lot to that. And I should have said in on SCOCO and COCO this morning, because I don't know exactly what was discussed there, but I'm sure, like you said, that there was good information there that you will be able to take forward to the work group. One of the things that I have thought about is, again, in giving what you have said, Vice President Mulholland, I think it would be helpful if we had some data. We really just don't have any data in terms of, what's the salary differential, let's say, between an associate degree and a 90 credit hour and 120 credit hour. What is the business and industry demand for those 90 credit hour degrees, in terms of, is it needed? And I don't think that we can glean any information nationally because there really isn't hardly any data out there. So it's new. So I think that what we're going to have to do is run some pilot programs and attain our own data. And to me, that seems a reasonable thing, is to say, all right, we will run some limited pilot programs. It would go through, now obviously this needs to be vetted by the work group, but it would go through the regular program review process, and you would get provisional approval. And then, again, this is something I'm just thinking. So we would have to say, what you would report out each year on some things like obviously the number of students, the demands, the things we would sort of, I think, base the metrics on program review that we already have in place, and then take a look at those things. I think that, obviously some boundaries, we would be looking at new programs, and hopefully those that are, as you said, related to workforce. We're not looking at taking a 120-hour program that's already there and saying, let's take a look at that and reduce it to 90 hours. So obviously these are just some thoughts of mine that hopefully we can have a policy framework that includes these pilot programs. And it would include both community, two-year colleges and universities. I think with the caveat that because it's 90 hours, so for community and technical colleges, the approval would not run through the TEA, but go through the regular program approval process is kind of what I'm thinking. Any thoughts on that very lengthy? That would be sort of as you work towards your work group that you're gonna, I mean, you've already stood up the work group, but as you look at those things in January, I do think that some data, the only way we're gonna get that is to run our own pilot programs and see how those work. Any thoughts, concerns? Issues? None? Some. It's a big one. I mean, it's a big one and we want to make sure that, everybody has the opportunity, but also to be able to make sure that we're meeting the true needs that are there and making those decisions the best we can based on what's really needed and the data, and is it working and is it something that will benefit the students and in the end too, business and industry. I mean, I think there's still work to do. I think that the board made it pretty clear when we talked about it in September that they did want a policy, before moving forward. And so I think the reasonable way to do that is to put the pilot programs within the policy itself. And then knowing that that policy would be a living document that as we get data, hopefully then that we will be able to then use that data to determine how we need to adjust or to modify that policy.
Yeah, and I think, I'm not really saying anything new that you haven't said, but I think there's some real opportunity here. And I think you're right in that if the data's not out there, we're gonna have to kind of navigate and kind of jump in and see what we can accomplish with the policy and the guardrails in place that we've kind of talked about as, for instance, no existing programs going into that because those are already set, but just kind of getting in there and seeing what works for our stakeholders, for our students.
That's well said. Thank you. No other. You're welcome to say, you can always, of course, email or text but we're certainly open to, thoughts and concerns on this. As I said, it really is a big one. And, it'd be different if we could look at I know some other states have tried this, but it's still pretty new. And when we look at the fact that, it'd be a substantial change when you look at HLC for some of this stuff, it makes it a pretty high hurdle too, even to be able to stand up a pilot program in terms of, getting approval for the program through HLC. So I wish there was, a little more data that would that would influence us in terms of, the information that it has, and we could get some best practices from that. But maybe this is an opportunity for us to really put some best practices out there. And to do that, we're gonna probably have to learn from some mistakes a little bit, I'm guessing, It's so the only thing you can do is just kind of jump off the cliff and see with guardrails. I mean, we still want like the safety net or whatever, but we want the parachute, but to hold us in case it doesn't work. But I don't know, unless anybody else has any other good ideas about how to move forward with the policy. I think maybe that would be the direction that we would recommend from Basque.
Very good. We'll take that kind of as kind of our charge, and Jen and I will start looking at maybe some ways to start moving that forward a little bit and get the work group convened again very soon.
And I know there is some urgency too, to try to kind of you know, and I know that everybody's really busy, but if we can get that, you know, sooner than later, then I think that would be important as well.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
I did think because I'd like some clarity from you, Regent Johnston, on one of the things we talked about this morning, talked about a lot of things at SCOCO.
And I'm sorry I don't have, I wish I would have listened.
Yeah, it was, I thought it was a good, healthy dialogue. Looking at my colleagues around the room. This is my comment, so I don't want to speak for the room, but we really want to focus on trying to find some common priorities and values. Recognize there's competing priorities and values amongst those that are in the room at SCOCO. Yet, not, these are my words, I don't want to get so caught up in policy development that we lose the opportunity to experiment. So,
Exactly.
the pilot or experimentation needs to be the mindset that we're in, knowing that we're gonna have to learn along the way. So I wouldn't want our system to have the long road to develop the policy without recognizing the opportunity in front of us. Said that more eloquently this morning, I think, but just want to make sure that we're not spending so much time developing policy that we lose some opportunity now. So that if pilots or experimentation can happen within policy, great. But that's my sentiment at this time. And it has ebbed and flowed over the last few months. As I've learned more about the dynamics and the priorities and values and perspectives that people are bringing to the table.
I appreciate that greatly, and I think you said that very eloquently, and I couldn't agree more. And I know what you're saying. I mean, unless we go out there and experiment, I don't know how we're gonna know or have any data. I think for me, the policy at this point just is kind of, we're going to try these pilot programs. But some guardrails, in fact, that everybody has an opportunity, if you have, you know, the wherewithal, the resources, and can show some sustainability, and you could, you know, get that approved through the regular program approval process as well as through HLC. I mean, and like I said, I don't think we want to start looking at, you know, anything but new programs, as opposed, you know, we don't want to take a 120 credit hour program and say, okay, you know, we're going to reduce this down. So that's kind of what my thoughts are towards policy, just some really kind of broad things. And really, it probably would take care of itself anyway if we're running it through the program approval process. I mean, I think that in itself will be a little bit self-limiting, and it will be a little bit self-limiting too when you look at resources, the ability to get it approved through HLC and all of those things. So I agree with you, and you said it much, much better than I did. So I appreciate it. Anybody else? It's really up to the work group now to tell us how to move forward. So I'm looking forward to it. I think it will be good. So. All right. I know you told me this, VP Monholland. Are all the provosts on the work group? No.
Yes.
But every institution is represented, or at least not every institution. The universities are all represented, and then we also have representation from the community and the tech.
The exact numbers, but I think there's 6 or 7 representatives from the community colleges.
Yeah, and I've seen it.
Tech colleges.
I apologize. I've seen it. I just couldn't find this one.
We're one recommendation that came out of SCOCO this morning, and we had even kind of broached this a week or so ago, is adding our workforce development team, April White's division, trying to include them in this.
I think that's probably good.
I also, I'm wondering if your schedule would allow, if we could invite you to sit in on
Oh, sure. Yeah.
these work.
Any
meetings.
opportunity for me to get off the farm, and we've been working cattle, is a good thing.
Yeah.
We might want to trade places with you from time to time.
You would. I would need that T-shirt that says the language that you learn working cattle is really, really
One might say that about higher ed too.
Yes.
Okay,
Well stated.
But yeah,
good.
and especially if there's a Zoom option, so
That's how we'll meet.
that works. All right, is there anything else to come before Basque this morning? The next meeting, January 6th, we did cancel that meeting. So just so all of you know, that of course is our Zoom option. And then that makes the next Basque meeting here in Topeka on January the 14th. All right, and since we're not voting, we are adjourned.